Hello, I am Quinny. Welcome to the channel. This is the SoRare Perspective, and joining me today we've got the legend that is Lairdinho, Andy Laird. Laird, thanks a lot for joining us. How you doing?
I'm great. No, thank you for having me. It's pretty exciting to see you with this new background and this empire that you're building. It's very exciting for all of us content absorbers.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's very exciting to see all the stuff that's going on at SoRare Data as well. And I was saying to you earlier on when you came in, but when the grand designs were going into this place, you were pretty much one of the first people I reached out to. I'm like, Andy boy, we've got plenty of excuses now to get together and talk gibberish and try and help the audience at home with whatever's going on. So you've kindly agreed to join me for this, which is great. And I don't really know how we're going to really run. I think we're both on the same page in that, but we know what we're going to discuss. We know what's going on in terms of the meat on the bones as such. So the main thing I had kind of in my head now, just for me as a player on SoRare at the moment, is like thinking ahead to like the next kind of cycle we're about to come out of. So, a point of recording, we're at 17th of January. All the European leagues are coming out of winter pretty much now in terms of like the main European ones in Champion Europe. We're getting Challenger Europe starting to waken up and come back to life. And we're coming into that next hurdle that Laird you would have experienced last year joining the platform, and many people at home haven't had yet, where we start to get the J League rolling out, the K League, MLS. There's going to be lots of action, lots of competition going forward. So we've both kind of cast our mind and cast our eyes down the road to what will be and what will become. And we're going to do our best to try and help you guys at home with maybe some team construction, or try and help you with any kind of missing holes that you're looking to fill over the next period, a midfielder, a striker, whatever's going on.
We look at like time frames differently,
Yep.
just in terms of SoRare. That like if you're like, oh, I'm gonna look 6 weeks ahead and see like what teams may be playing well or whatever. And then we were saying like 6 weeks in SoRare is just an absolute eternity. Like it's so long, and it's weird how like SoRare just is always happening because we like game weeks end on the same day they begin, and there's two every week, and they're just all the time. And yet it also just feels like certain things just take forever. Like it feels like Austria. You said January 17th is today. Feels like Austria and Russia haven't played in 10 years and they're not playing for another 10 years. And so, but like a lot of the game part of SoRare is planning ahead and figuring out like where you'll be able to take advantage of certain situations. And so it's a tough balancing act.
Big time. And especially as well because like the majority of people that are playing the game at the moment are still very much in um, the square after go. They're just getting going, maybe with one region, maybe with two, maybe moving from limited to rare or vice versa or whatever. And what a lot of people need to get ready for is the fact that there is going to be so much variety available to them, because now you are really hemmed in with these are the only U23 keepers, or this is the best midfielder available. And when the door does swing open, then variety is your best friend in the market, because as you know, I've heard you say many a time, like buying it back, or with the SoRare data features, buying Mbappe for 5-6 ETH or whatever is great, and you've got Mbappe, but is he the only guy that gets those scores? Maybe not. So with kind of looking ahead, we're trying to kind of beat the crowd in terms of like the guy that might catch form, because when guys' prices change, it's always because they've delivered on something. The key is just grabbing them, getting your hands on them, and using them when they deliver, and then catching that kind of spike. That's a little kind of perfect storm. So when you were kind of casting a head, Laird, what kind of caught your eye? Was it a team, a player, a league? What was kind of going on for you?
Well, it all kind of depends on what you're specifically looking to do. And I've been just trying to figure out a path into Champion Europe myself in Champion Europe Rare. And so those are kind of the teams that I've been looking at least in the near term. I've recently given up on Challenger for a number of reasons that apply more to me than they do like everyone. Like me not playing Challenger doesn't mean I don't think anybody should play it. So I want to at least say that. I just thought that the way that I like to play SoRare, I was more interested in prioritizing Champion Europe than Challenger. And I had some people talk to me and they were like, well, it's just because you don't want to like buy an Ajax stack. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm choosing to just go into a region that you could just buy a Bayern stack. Like I can't buy just a Bayern stack. Like that's just not part of my budget. Real Madrid, like the big clubs, at least in terms of like stacking, they're just out of my budget at this point. And I don't expect them to be in my budget anytime soon. So not to like immediately plug SoRare data, but like I use SoRare data to figure out guys that I want to buy that I think can match scores of Robert Lewandowski and Karim Benzema. And will they do it as often? Of course not. If they did, then they would be just as expensive. But basically trying to find all those players. And part of that is looking at fixtures and, who do I think coming up can actually outperform how they've done previously. And if they are kind of mid-table clubs and they're playing the next, the bottom three times in the next 6 weeks, like maybe I should look at those teams and try to take advantage. And so those are some of the teams I've looked at, and all of a sudden it's like, I'm looking at Monaco and you have thrown me Getafe previously. And I'm just like, I don't know why I would look at these teams. And then you look at the fixtures and you're like, I should be looking at these teams. And even though, 6 weeks out can feel like an eternity, if you can really hit one of those 6 weeks really well because of the matchups, then, that pays off a lot of your investment if you can place highly in really any competition, but particularly Champion Europe.
100% agreed. And I've actually had a lot of fun digging into Champion Europe with a few more limited cards, especially with this kind of homework I kind of assigned both of us almost, but mainly myself, into looking into. So in terms of Champion Europe, I'll go first, I guess, right? So like the first team that really grabbed my attention for like the month of February was Olympique Marseille, or Marseille as most people call them, or OM. So over the month of February, wait 2 seconds, I pull up. So they've got another game in January with Lens, and then they've got a cup game. But starting February, they're at home to Angers, away to Metz, at home to Clermont, and away to Troyes or Troyes. All 4 of those clubs are very firmly placed in the lower echelons of the French league. They've got huge goal differences against them in their league standing position. And Marseille, they now are flying high under Saint-Pauli. So at the moment, currently third with a game in hand on second with 37 points. Over that time period as well, they've also got European fixtures with Qarabag. The first fixture's at home, which I think is amazing because Qarabag, being in Azerbaijan, like it's such a long journey. If you can kill the first tie, like 3-4-0, that will be a big motivation for them, so they know they can rotate the second leg. But that's like 5-6 fixtures in the month of February where I would be looking at Marseille defence or defensive midfielders per se, because I don't see Troyes, Clermont, who else? Sorry, Angers, Qarabag.
Yeah,
I don't see them getting more than maybe 2 goals aggregated between them. If Marseille went all month with a clean sheet, Pau Lopez will be a popular guy, and I think, goalkeepers are a different conversation, of course, but I could very easily see Marseille getting through the month of February with a lot of clean sheets.
How often, like when you look at that 6 weeks, like obviously that's like a killer run for them, like killer in a good way.
Yep.
But like if over the next 6 game weeks, they have like 3 good matchups and 3 poor ones. Like, is that good enough for you, or are you looking for more than that?
Well, I think like when you're looking at these kind of situations, so the kind of players I wrote down that I think looked really good in terms of limiting prices on Marseille was like Caleta Car, right? So Caleta Car, Paul Lirola, and Duan Perez, right? So the 3 of those guys have got a few different profiles. If I was to go out and pick up a Caleta Car, I would probably be more interested in just getting him super cheap while he's not getting this. Because if you look at like Saliba and 1 or 2 of the other defenders, Laird, the prices of them are way different to Caleta Car at the moment. So I would have somebody like Caleta Car because I can't afford a Laird, but I think he's got the same output potential. And I would probably want to keep him for a bit longer because he's a Croatian national as well. And there's a few other bits and pieces going on with that. But with Luan Perez or Paul Lirola, if they were to move up a price bracket or 2 after, let's say, they play Angers, Metz, and Qarabag, big crescendo. The next fixture after that is Clermont, who everyone spanks.
Yeah.
So that could be a nice opportunity. If I was trading through fixtures, that could be a nice opportunity because like you do want to catch it when the buyer still has something to gain, So like that would be maybe 3 weeks down the road. And then even after the Troyes or the Troyes game, they're away to Marseille, they're away at home to Monaco, away to Brest, and then at home to Nice. So it's not as if the fixtures really turn in a big way. Saint Etienne, Montpellier, they'll have then the next round of the Conference League, which is the Conference League, it might be a weakish team again.
Yep.
So in terms of that, I would probably be quite happy with it. In terms of the success rate, I think if I'm looking at these defenders that I've just mentioned, I'd even throw in Rongier as a midfielder as well, who's just very combative and in a clean sheet match that he's going to get lots of easy passes, moving the ball around the pitch. These guys, their objective for me would be, if I'm thinking about, let's say, Luan Perez and Rongier, if I put both of them into a team together, I'm hoping before multiplier to get around the 100 mark on an average, So if they both come in with a 60, brilliant. Before multiplier, or even better, fantastic.
Sure.
So as long as they do what I would expect them to do performance-wise, then I would say it's job done. And it's kind of down to me as the player to work out if that's going to win me prizes and surround them with things that would help achieve that.
It's funny to me that you said you would sell them before. Which game was it? Before
Clip one.
So like, I think
if I was trading this, if I was buying them to sell them.
Yeah. No, I think you are giving the market too much credit.
Probably.
Like, I think a higher L5 is more important, at least from most of the market buyers. The L5 is more important than the upcoming matchup. And so you could have a guy who has just, an L5 of 80, but all of a sudden next up, is like PSG, Rennes, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, but he's L5 is 80. I'm going to buy him. Like, I think you saying you're going to trade before the last good game, I think you're better off just waiting.
Well, yeah, I don't know, but I'm always comfortable doing that because for me personally, like if I'm going to trade out or something, if that's like the deliberate practice that I'm undertaking, I need to know I can sell it for a reason. So I know people would want to buy at that stage because the fixture is so appealing. And even the next two after that, Quarabag away and then Twa away, that's still 3 good games. So like if I'm going to plan to get out of something, I need a reason that other people will let me get out. Like you say, if the next 5 fixtures is PSG and this one and that one, then no one's going to pay top dollar at that stage. Or in my opinion anyway, I might be giving the market too credit. I do accept that because I don't sell a lot of cards at peak. But I'm always comfortable in how I move, because I think I've got to have something for people to buy into in that respect.
No, that's totally fair. And I think one of the important things of this exercise of looking at schedules is trying to time the peak for when to sell a card is really, really hard. Yeah. And it's not worth it. Like you can say, yes, I'm going to sell more for more than I bought it for. And like, that's what we want to do. Obviously you would prefer to buy something for less and sell for more, but we just don't know when that peak is, but we do know like when the peak of the schedule is. And so that in itself of like, that the schedule is going to get worse. You don't know what the scores are going to be, and you don't have to try to time that. You don't know when the price is going to go. But if you know the schedule is going to turn poorly, that's a good time to get out. And there are a lot of people who just don't look ahead of time enough. And so that's the advantage that you have of doing your homework of, I think they're going to struggle in these next few games. So not only do you not want the card in your lineups because they're not going to do well, but you'd also rather just have the ETH back in your wallet so that you can go spend for the next guy that is going to have 4 of 6 good fixtures, and you just work from there.
Completely. And with some of those guys as well, like I'll use Kaleta as an example again, just I think he's a really good player. I quite like him. The price of him versus like a Laird and there was another defender that came up quite expensive from our Boubacar Kamara. I know he plays midfield, but he's listed as a defender. But like me buying him now, if I bought him now for those fixtures, which I would be very, very capable of doing and would definitely reap the reward of it, sometimes using that hot month, buys you a year, So I use him for that hot month. He pulls 2 rewards. I got him cheapest chips. And then for an individual trading position, it's like pressure off. That thing is like very much in the green. He's contributed well. You might not see the inside of a team sheet again for me until X amount of time. But whenever I look at him, the entry point is favourable. And in the meantime, he has added to the club in some way, with rewards or even threshold, whatever it might be. And sometimes getting a longer play, because again, things can happen. He might transfer to air quotes bigger team and other things can happen, But sometimes it can be a good entry point just to saddle in by a guy and just go, I'm going to have this guy for a long time. The fixtures for the end of the season look crap in air quotes, for example, but now I can get a nice little window and then I'll just take a step back and just wait to see what the next year brings, the next 2 years, whatever you think for the guy in question.
Yeah, no, I think that's super smart. It's funny that you used Kaleta as an example because I almost bought him. It must have been a year ago, because there were basically rumors of him going to Liverpool.
Yes.
And it was either, I can't remember if it was January or last July or August. But so I saw that, and Van Dijk was still hurt, and Matip was always hurt. Gomez just went down, and I was like, if he went to Liverpool, like he's going to be locked in for a while. Yep. And I think there were stories that he was at the airport, like about to fly there, and like the deal fell through. But I remember like thinking to myself, like, I'm going to buy this guy because I'm going to have Liverpool starting center back for, even if it was just the rest of the season or maybe however many months Van Dijk was out. And I remember like the Twitter, I was on Twitter and it like came out that he was at the airport, and I'm like, oh my God, do I buy right now? And then there was another one that like he's left the airport, and I was like, he left the airport? Why would he do that? And they were like, the deal is off. And I'm like, if, and not that he like wasn't a good player for Marseille, and like, but he like went back and like didn't play for a little bit. Like he wasn't a regular starter, and he's now starting again. But it was just like one of those things that, you know, the potential transfers, you know, just throw everything off. And yeah, so just be careful with those. As you were like, hopefully the guy gets a transfer, but.
No, big time. But even that kind of thing always, like with players, like Kaleta Car aside, but when you get like good transfer links repeatedly, you know, then you know,
Mm-hmm.
gives you a really good indication, especially if you don't know too much about a player. If you can see like, oh, Liverpool were really close to signing him, used to be a Man City guy, he's played here as well, he's been blah, 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 whatever, then you get a good idea of, well, if the guy does leave Marseille, or when, it would be for a team that plays football like this at the very least, because that's the sort of team that values a player like him, you know, and that can shed some light on the situation for you as well. Did you find a Champ Euro team that's got a good kind of February outlook, or was it?
Well, I do, but I'm not going to say quite yet, because I wanted to ask you another question of basically like you know a lot about football.
Thank you.
Like I think you know much more than a lot of people, and I mean, you know a lot. And so when you look at a schedule of any team and you see like the next 6 games, like, do you just know that their opponents are poor, or like what do you look at anything specific? They're like, oh, you know, this team is overperforming their XG and it's going to come down, and like, what do you look at to actually recognize a good upcoming schedule?
So the first thing I look at for the scheduling is I go to the league table, and what I'm always looking for, first of all, is the teams that don't concede a lot of goals.
Mm-hmm.
Because the teams that don't concede a lot of goals, they could be anywhere in the table now. Goal scoring is hard.
Yeah.
But teams that can defend, they could be good teams that can defend. They could be 4th bottom, they could be 6th. But teams that are good at defending, you can bank on them anyway, you know. So if you want to find somebody like Marseille, for example, if you look at the league table, they've got the best defence, only 16 goals conceded in the league in 20 matches. So that's the first team I looked at. And then Marseille, you're like, whoa, here we go.
Yeah.
You know, they're not going to concede in February, you know. And then if they're not going to concede, there's a good, you know, if I believe they're very going to concede under 2.5 goals in the month of February, for example, then it's just how many goals are they capable of? Why are they going to concede so few? In Marseille's case, it's because they're a top team with a great defence.
Mm-hmm.
They're playing the bottom of the league, so they should run riot. But if it's the other way around, for example, and I'm just looking down the table in France, there's not really any good examples, but I found some in Turkey. So there's a little Turkish team I would add in as a little caveat to this. I'm not going to really talk about it in too much detail, but it's Giresunspor, if that's how you say it. They're a green and white team. They're 14th now in Turkey. Their goals conceded is 21, okay? And it's not necessarily one of the best in the league, but Basa Shakir, who are 4th, have only conceded 1 goal fewer. And Hatayspor, who are 3rd, have conceded 8 more. You know, so their defense is like, it works. You know, it does, you know, it's scoring goals is their problem. So they've only scored 20 in 21 matches. So a team like that, I'm hoping to find them against teams that struggle to score, because they will definitely keep them out. And then for defending players and for midfielders, you can get good AA scores to base from there.
Yeah.
And then a Giresunspor, I probably wouldn't look to get like a striker for a big hitting goal scorer, unless you know the guy takes the penalties and takes all the free kicks or whatever. But then at least you know that the defense play 100% of the matches. You know, you need to watch for. I'm just thinking as I'm talking, but you need to watch out for bookings in some of these situations when it is like a solid, low-ranked defensive team against other people of the same kind of caliber. But yeah, so a strong defense is only what I start for, because you can always play a weaker defense next week, you know.
Yeah.
Kind of idea.
Okay, so I'm glad you said that, only because I did the same. I basically looked at the table, and like I'm not an expert in every league. I'm probably not an expert in any league, to be honest. Like I know a lot of players, and I like know where to find information, so I like can put it that way.
Yep.
But I also looked at France, and the one that kind of popped out to me, and I'll be honest, I only came upon them because one of their center backs came up in like a player search that I was doing, or maybe it was like maybe he was a similar player to somebody else, somebody I really wanted.
Yep.
Like one of the tools I use a lot on SoRare data is the similar players tool, where we basically just like, you see a player's L15 and like, here are the guys in their age group who score similarly. And so when you want like a defender, like I want Marquinhos, but I also don't want to spend 1.5 ETH on a defender. So who I don't actually don't even know if he's only 1.5. So you go to his similar players and they're like, oh, everyone who's like Marquinhos costs 1 ETH. I'm like, okay, let me go to David Alaba. And I'm like, he's half an ETH or so. And then you can find guys who score similar to him who don't cost half an ETH.
Nice.
So I ended up looking at Monaco. And Monaco is currently 5th in Ligue 1. And this is why I wanted to ask you, like, how many good matchups do they have to have in the next few weeks for you to consider them? Because they play Montpellier this weekend. Then they play Lyon after a French Cup game. But then they play. So one of the other things that I do is, if you don't know teams, it's like, it's okay if you don't know the teams. Like sometimes stats give you enough.
Yep.
So after that run of games, they play the 18th team at home. They play the 19th team away, the 14th team at home. And you're just like, well, if I want to get players from whatever team, if they're playing teams that are battling relegation, maybe those are good matchups. And so the problem is, it's like, oh, then they play Marseille, like that run. And then it's like, oh, then they play PSG. But if you have, 3 or 4 games in the next 6 against teams that are battling relegation, like, is that enough to overlook the poor matchups that they have within that span? And so Monaco's sort of in that range.
Yeah, no, but Monaco, I like with Monaco, I like that back-to-back with Lorient and Bordeaux, because the thing with Monaco, they're not in Europe, are they? No, they're not in a cup or something.
I don't
Europa
think so.
League? Yeah, no, I've got them here. Europa League group stages. Yeah, so on Flash Scores, their Europa League fixture hasn't even been listed on it for some reason. That's really weird. So they'll have. Let's see who they've got in the Europa League. I noticed that earlier on with somebody else on Flash Scores, so that's not. I don't think that's unique to Leon. I think it's maybe some sort of glitch on the website. So if you are looking at fixtures on Flash Scores, maybe cross-reference it. Oh no, Leon don't have an opponent on the thing.
Monaco.
Sorry, Monaco. I beg your pardon. Yeah. So Monaco, Leon, Sparta, Moscow, Frankfurt. There's a lot of teams here that don't have a registered opponent for the next round. So I don't know if they're waiting on.
They're waiting. Yeah, they won their group, Monaco.
So I wonder what they're waiting on to give them an opponent. That's weird.
I remember there was a whole thing with the Conference League because Rennes and Spurs didn't play their last game.
Oh yeah.
Again, I'm not a Europa League expert.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. But those 2 fixtures are really good. But the thing with it is Monaco's like season. They'll still be in the Europa League, of course. We've just worked that out. But as you say, they've got Monaco, they've got Marseille. Strasbourg away is not going to be an easy fixture, I can tell you that. And then at home at PSG. But after that, they've played all the big teams twice. They're not going to play another big team until Lille on the third and last game of the season.
And that's so far away that
exactly. So you've got, so you can use little entry points like the one you've found. I'm not saying this to you, Laird, of course, I'm saying this to the audience, but like Lorient and Bordeaux, 2 great fixtures you can maybe get in for. Maybe they do good against Reims as well. And then after that, you just kind of hunker down and accept you're not going to get much joy out of them for a while until you get to April. But then when you get to April, they might still be in the latter stages of European competitions, so midweek fixtures. You've then got Metz, Troyes, Rennes and Nice are difficult. Saint Etienne are a basket case, and then Angers, and then the last 2 games of the season is Brest and Lens. It's a great end of run, So definitely, but guys like Ben Yedder, who should play all season if they're fit, takes penalties, goal scorers. The end of the season is when those players come alive. To get into the Champions League or to get to the semi-finals of the Europa League, or So I definitely like a little entry window to then try. So I bought Abres Mendes at the beginning of the season, and I bought Abres Mendes for Celta Vigo's fixtures after Christmas. So like the fact that he done okay for me before Christmas is nice.
That's quite a long game, yeah.
I think with super rares, but I mean, you were talking about super rares earlier on. You really need to be, because like I think there's only 2 of them, maybe 3 of them, and then it's when you want them, you're at the mercy of so many things. So it's kind of like for a super rare, it's like I kind of need to get it when it's available, and then work out, or before I get it, work out why and what the experience is going to be like, because there's nothing worse. Won't stay on super rares too long, but you'll know this, Andy. Like, there's nothing worse than when you pick up a super rare and then like after 2 weeks you're like, that was the worst time to buy that super rare imaginable. Like, I could have waited 5 months and bought them, like it's so painful, so
it's really painful.
So with super rares, that's definitely advance notice of what's going to happen is like well important to your mental well-being with it, and whether you're going to hate the guy or whether you can tolerate him or not for just taking up your budget or whatever.
Yeah.
But with limiteds and rares, this kind of thing is much easier to do, especially limiteds, because like if you're maybe looking at some of these fixtures for a weekend when it's really competitive, and you might be like a defender away or a midfielder away, buying for one game week, this is something you're talking about earlier as well. Buying for one game week is a fine tightrope to walk, but buying for 2 is a little bit easier. Buying for 4 is a bit easier, and kind of knowing what you're going to get from them, before you're going to sell them, whatever, it just makes it a bit more of a comfortable transaction, rather than if it's one game and then that's it, it's crap for the rest of it, then you're kind of on to
I think there is a knowledge edge when it comes to short-term moves. Like if you want to buy a guy for a single game week or 2 game weeks, and you just happen to, and it's not like anything that not anybody else can find, but there is definitely a pocket of SoRare where you can outwork people. Like, we say, like, if you want to put in the time or you put in the money, ideally you can put in both. But like, if you put in the time to find somebody that, like, that one of the starting center backs is hurt and I know who's going to come in, I'll buy that guy. And then after, if he starts 2 matches, then all of a sudden people are like, oh, that guy's playing, I'll buy him. And like, you're not going to make a ton of money doing that way, but like you can make some. And I was joking around to somebody earlier today. I tried this like recently, and I don't even want to talk about who the player is because I'm so angry at myself. But I basically, like, it's a team. I mean, I guess it doesn't matter. I bought Daniele Rugani from Juventus because Chiellini and Bonucci were out, and De Ligt got a red card somewhere. So I was like, Rugani's going to start. It's guaranteed. So I bought him to play him. He had an absolutely horrible game. They beat Roma 4-3, and he was just terrible. And then all of a sudden, like, I forget which, Bonucci or Chiellini, one of them was tested positive for COVID and like came back earlier than I thought he would. So I'm like, now I'm going to have this Juventus center back who doesn't play. So I'm like, let me sell him. So I sold him, and he started the next game again. Like, he was supposed to play 2 games. I got the 2 games that were both terrible. I sold him, and he got a 3rd game, and he dropped to 70. And I'm like,
Doesn't that always happen?
But I sold him. It was not much profit at all, but I did sell him for a profit. This was a rare card. And I think it was as simple as, like, I knew he was going to play. So I bought him. He played 2 games, now a 3rd, and now he's probably 3 times the price that I sold him at. But anyway, and then I got out for more than I bought in. And so even if he didn't win me anything, which he definitely did not, I was able to at least make a small profit. And that was purely because I did the research of, they're going to need a center back. They have one. He's, fairly young, and there were no like transfer rumors. Like I actually like started looking up transfer rumors because I'm like, maybe he plays well. It's January right now. Another team needs a center back, but like there didn't seem to be any moves that he was going anywhere. And so that was the time where I put in the time and the work, and I made a small profit. And I think there's a pocket of SoRare where you can do that. And looking at the upcoming schedules is a big part of that, because like, also, if they're playing, the 3 worst teams in the league and he happens to be starting, you could get some huge scores there, and that, that helps your lineup, and maybe you can sell later on. So just like always, this whole thing, like, always look ahead, because you can find things if other people are not looking and they're just looking at L5s.
Completely, another team that kind of came up to me was Sevilla. So when I was kind of diving about, having a look at things, at first Betis caught my eye because I just couldn't believe how high in the table they were. And obviously I know Pellegrini's a manager at Betis, and Pellegrini's a one-trick pony. You know what you're going to get with his teams. It's just kick the ball forward and let's go and attack. That's just all we're going to do every day. But their fixtures are actually god awful in February. They've got Zenit in the. I'm not going to talk about bets for longer than 10 seconds, sorry, but they've got Zenit in the Europa League now. I would actually back Betis to maybe get by Zenit, to be quite honest with you, because I just maybe would. And I know there's a lot of Zenit people out there that will probably be shouting at their screen right now, like, "Are you fucking mad?" But I don't think their fixtures are typically appealing. But what that did bring me to was Sevilla. Now, Sevilla are still in European competition as well, as we know, the kings of the Europa League that they are. Let me just check it as the Europa League. It might be Champions League group stage. They finished third, I think, didn't they? Yeah. So they're still in Europa League this year. And now the thing with so their fixtures over the month of February, we get a nice kind of run up anyway, you know. So if you did get anywhere near a Sevilla card, like in the next kind of couple of days, they've got a strong fixture with Valencia, but good players come out in strong games in my experience. At home at Celta Vigo, which would be tough, but then they're away to Osasuna, at home to Elche, at home to Dinamo Zagreb, away to Espanyol, away to Zagreb, and then they've got a derby end of the month, which would be a big fixture. They're at home. So that's like a great run of fixtures against a lot of teams that can concede goals. I wouldn't expect to score much. Zagreb have probably had their best European campaign or one of their better campaigns in the last 20 years easily. So they're definitely not an absolute taker, but it's a game you would expect a Champ Euro team to walk into with some confidence. Last thing I'll say on them, sorry, but if you throw into the mix the amount of African players in the forward positions that Seville hold that are away at the moment, the rotation that they've been experiencing most of the season is kind of been taken away from them. You know, so you kind of have a better idea of who's going to be playing.
Yeah. So I perked up when you mentioned them, mostly because I knew that Bono was gone for AFCON. So I actually bought a Marko Dimitrovic, excuse me, who's their backup.
Yep.
And I realized that like he's probably not the starter when AFCON is over, but I have people who've told me like it could happen. Lopetegui brought him in, him like specifically asked for him. So there are ways that you can like justify buying cards after you buy them that I've been working on for quite a while with Sevilla. But I think one of the things that we shouldn't overlook, particularly even with Betis though, is Zagreb and Zenit will not have played like an official match for months.
Yep.
Before their European matches. So like they'll play friendlies, and I'm sure they'll take them quite seriously because they have to like get back in the swing. But it's very different like playing your first real game in months versus a team that has just been playing all the time up until that point. So
100% agree. The reason I kind of had that feeling with is because Celtic drew Zenit in the last knockout round of the Europa League like 4 or 5 years ago. It was when Roberto Mancini was the Zenit manager. The first leg was at Celtic Park, and I think it was a draw, but we were all over them. And then, see, when we went to the second leg, it was away. It was like maybe 2 weeks later or something because the fixtures were normal. This was like 5 years ago before COVID and everything else. So they had 2 weeks. They maybe had another game from Russia in between or whatever, and then they spanked us, over in Russia. But playing Betis, because of that reason, I know how much the gap was between Celtic and Zenit in the first leg versus the second leg. It was like there was a totally different competition. So I think Betis are anyway. Yeah, I'm with you on that.
Do you like when you came up with this idea? Is there like a specific league that you started with? If you were like, well, Bundesliga matches have more goals, so like if I want to find goals, do I go to Bundesliga first, or do you not consider that stuff?
Well, once I found Marseille, I then kind of went, right, well, and then I kind of ended up with defensive players. So I then wanted to start looking for offensive players. So I started then just looking at teams that I know have like good players on them in the forward positions as much. In terms of like using like raw data to lead you down a path, I'd rather try and find a club, a set of players, a manager, something that I can identify with in some way. Maybe it's somebody I used to watch. Maybe it's a manager that used to be at a big team that's now at a small team, or something. Because I do need to be able to engage with whatever I'm going to utilize. Like if me being a Celtic fan, if my strategy was, became buying Rangers players, I would not be motivated by it or engaged by it, and it would do horribly.
Sure.
It needs to be something that I can buy into. A team I like already, and I can look at like the Bundesliga, La Liga, all these places, and identify with maybe 3 teams in each league. Like, oh, I remember they had a good year in the Champions League one year, or I really like their striker, or I remember their manager, or something. But what I find I need to do when I go into Challenger is really look at the form. So if any of you use flash scores, when you go into a league table, you've got a tab for like the form, and you can do last 5, 10, 15 games, home and away. You can do lots of different things as well. So I tend to look at, if I'm going into Challenger and I'm trying to find like maybe somebody's got a good month coming up or a good end of season. This time last year I bought a lot of players, U23s in particular, that had a good like second half of the season. Maybe they were in Europe and they had like a good knockout round and a prospectively good domestic campaign, or they weren't in Europe and the rotation risk goes down because a team that's not in Europe, there's just less fixture pressure, so you might get a bit more consistency in selection. But with the Challenger guys, I always go in and look at form, because if you look at the Turkish league again, I'm there because it's just, I think for anyone who's got under 50 cards, the Turkish league is like a must utilize league, just the amount of fixtures that's available there, But if you look at the top of the table, very few people at home will have seen these names before in their life, Trabzonspor, I know a little tiny bit about. Konyaspor, no. Hatayspor, no. Başakşehir, yes. And then even in fifth, Adana Demirspor, So it's one of these ones you're not going to know. You might not have much to identify with these people. So then you're looking at like maybe a 4-week window of entry to maybe somebody like, if you look at Trabzonspor, right, they almost certainly, they can't fuck it up now. They should finish in a European spot for next year. So if you want to get some guys that are going to be playing weekend and midweek next season, you might want to find a nice window when Trabzonspor are like, playing the bottom 5 or whatever, that kind of thing, to then get your card for next season in early kind of idea. And the reason I kind of came on to that, sorry, Laird, is when you look at the Challenger Euro situation, as much as we can look at Turkey and go, Galatasaray, Fenerbahce, Besiktas, 1, 2, 3, no bother. There is always a team. It might be St. Union Jalois. It might be Beerschot last season. They were top at Christmas in Belgium. In Challenger Europe, weird things happen, unexpected things happen, and you can miss them if you're ignorant to it. And I use that in a respectful way to everyone who's listening, But if you just think, oh, Turkey, there's not much going on there, you will be missing tons. If you think, oh, Austria, it's just Salzburg and nobody else, you will miss things,
There are a lot of the Turkey situation is really interesting to me, because I think that, like, I haven't really dove into Turkey much. I actually won a card, which feels like months ago now, because it was months ago, but it was a guy I'd never heard of. And like, that doesn't mean anything. Like, it's a classic SoRare tradition of opening your reward and you're like, I have no idea who this guy is, but he played in Turkey. And I was just like, oh man, I think it was a tier 1. And I was like super disappointed, I remember.
Yeah.
And then I pull him up. I do exactly what everybody does. I pull him up on SoRare data, and he had like an L15 of 60. And I was like, really? And then like, the more you dive into Turkey, there are a lot of guys like that. Like, there are high scoring players in that league. And even if they're not like a lot of goal scorers, there are a lot of guys with like really high all arounds that, like, there are points in that league. We have all the cards, and they play all the time, it feels like.
Yep.
And I think that's like a really, really untapped league just in SoRare. Like, it's not like you're going to find these guys super cheap, but they're like interesting differentials because everybody else wants to play the guys from, Belgium and the Netherlands. And, everybody tends to focus there. And I think it's one of those, if you can throw yourself into the Super League, then like, you're going to have an advantage. Just in the same way, like with Austria, you were saying that like everybody's like, oh, it's Salzburg and everybody else. Like, the way that their playoff system works, basically they split the league 6 and 6. And if you get like the 6th place team or 7th place team, like, they're going to be playing the end of their season is playing all of the bottom half teams.
Yep.
And it's like, that's a knowledge thing that, like, if you can get that beforehand, then like, just what we were saying, we're looking at like, who are the champion Europe teams that are playing all the bottom teams. Like in Austria, they literally set it up for you so you can just get that 7th place team, and they play all the teams that are worse than them. And on the flip side, like if you have the 6th place team, they're going to play 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th twice. And it's like, maybe that you almost would, you would prefer all of the guys on the 7th place team than the 6th place team.
Definitely, in that kind of angle for sure. But that's what kind of brought me to Turkey originally, was looking at fixtures and stuff, because the first time I started talking about them, we had Galatasaray and Fenerbahce, And what I was starting to look at was I want a challenger goalkeeper. And I started off with that. I haven't really played challenger for the last like 10 months or so, but I want a challenger keeper because they'll be cheaper than a champion keeper.
Yeah.
But they run in the European season, so that's why I started there. And then I just want whoever is going to have the most games possible. And as soon as you look across the challenger European leagues, you see a lot of leagues with like 15 clubs and 18 clubs and 14, 12, but Turkey's get 20, and it's a full complement, as you say, no winter break and whatever. So as much as they're unfashionable, like I said earlier on, I would definitely say if you've got sub 50 cards in any scarcity, like there's some great foundation cards in here, whether it be a goalkeeper, a centre back, a midfielder, that the month of February aside or whatever, they will stand you in good stead going forward for the European calendar.
Yeah, no, that's a great shout. That whole league, I think, is untapped in terms of SoRare.
Yeah. So I had a wee look at. I kind of stayed in champion as well, just because that's where my kind of vibe is, So Sevilla attack, Marseille defense. But I said that in Turkey, Gironspor, the 14th team, really good defense, and they've got some fixtures that I think their players will get good scores in. They do play first and second quite quickly in the month of February, but I do expect the defenders will score good points in those games. I wouldn't always be deterred by, like a big team coming to town or going away to a big club or something that's riding high, because like if it is, you want your defender to be clearing balls, making clearances, triples, all that kind of stuff. They're not going to get that against a team that banks out in the 18-yard box and defends their own box,
right.
So like some of the biggest scores I had with Van Dijk and Robbo and stuff like that, they didn't have clean sheets, for Liverpool. They're getting, but it's possession. They're
working,
as well as going forward, big time. But with the last thing I'll kind of run out with Seville, sorry. But so Osasuna, one of the teams that are playing, are the fourth worst team at home in the league. Elche have got 2 wins in the last. They've got 2 wins away from home all season with only 11 goals, so they've only scored 1 goal a game. So 2 very generous fixtures on top of the Zagreb stuff. But I make Ocampos, Rafa Mir, and Papu Gomez absolute killers for those fixtures as long as they're fit and healthy and playing, especially for the price that they're kind of rocking about at the now compared to some other, even other La Liga cards. But to have Seville, who we know will get to the Europa League final, they are already there. They just need to actually do the due diligence of admin and meet the team. Oh, hi, how are you? This is a quarter final, lovely.
Yeah.
Okay, they have to do that every year. So to get in with these fixtures, I think some of those guys will definitely come back to reap some rewards for the folks at home.
Yeah, I like that shout. So one of the other teams I was looking at, and what I was going to ask you also, because you know these teams so well, are there teams that are underperforming that you look at their schedule? Like, you obviously would prefer like everybody from the first place team to be playing the last place team and you just load up.
Yeah.
But one team that, and I will be honest that I am slightly biased with them because I own one of their players, like one of their most important players. And so I can't decide if my slight optimism is because I should be optimistic, or because I'm invested in this idea that they should be better. And so it is. But anyway, the team is Gladbach, who have been really bad this season in terms of like how they usually are. Like they generally compete for European spots every year. Yep. They are currently 12th in the Bundesliga. They've scored 25 goals, which is, let's see, Bayern's at 61. So they've scored half the goals of Dortmund. Dortmund's at 49.
Yep.
And they're not Bayern, they're not Dortmund, but they are a very good team. And they're 12th right now. And upcoming schedule, like they play Union Berlin at home, away to Armenia, home against Augsburg. Like those are good. And then it's like, oh, but then they're away to Dortmund. But are the 3 matchups before better than when they'll likely get blasted by Dortmund? But then Wolfsburg, Stuttgart, Hertha Berlin, like they have a good run. And I happen to have Jonas Hoffman. He's the reason why I'm like optimistic. I bought him just before he got hurt. He's supposed to be back. Like, can I convince myself that they'll be good and that's a team that I maybe want to be a part of? They rotate their forwards they have a lot of forwards that they play. So they may have like consistent starters, but it feels like they always play like 58 minutes and then somebody else comes in. And nothing worse than like having a guy and having him come off at 58. But should I be optimistic about Gladbach?
So I'm looking at so the first thing I wanted to look at, see when you're looking at like Gladbach versus Dortmund, you think, oh, Dortmund should spank them, right? The first thing I want to look at is who did Dortmund play before and after Gladbach? Do you know who they played before and after Mönchengladbach? In both fixtures, it's a two-legged tie. Rangers.
Oh, so
so
they'll roll them.
So they're going to roll. They're definitely going to roll Rangers in Germany. Maybe the second leg is in Glasgow, so maybe they've killed the tie, like we were mentioning earlier on with another team. I forget who now, but maybe they kill it in the Westerfalen Stadium. They need to take the league seriously, Dortmund. So they'd probably, I don't see them rotating against Gladbach at all. So the Dortmund fixture, I think, is to be feared. I would definitely go along with that. But if they had like Bayern, maybe like or something, maybe a tougher Europa League game that they'd have to prioritize or something, that maybe would give you a chance, because Dortmund are really bad. So the thing with Gladbach, right, is the manager Adi Hütter, I always forget how you say it, right, came from Frankfurt, and before that it might have been at Salzburg or something, right? So Frankfurt have been really good at like transition play and like winning the ball back, and their third couple of passes they're through on goal with like Sepp Haller or Jovic or these types of guys. So Gladbach under Marco Rosa and under their previous manager, they've been more like Dortmund in the terms of like they want to get on the ball, they want to use their attacking players, like Marcus Thuram's only been there a year, but they've had some other guys, some of their names are escaping me, sorry, but who have maybe been sold on or whatever. So I think that number one, the manager with the existing playing staff, there's been a longer transition than what we've seen in other Bundesliga clubs. So like when Marco Rosa's kind of had a hard time at Dortmund, he's not really got them kicking and screaming, and he was the Gladbach manager last year. He's not really got a great tune out with them. And Frankfurt now, because there was a kind of chain of managers that all changed, but Frankfurt have only just started getting their kind of groove and their kind of thing together. So Gladbach do need to get their for lack of a better term, they need to get their shit together, but they are only 8 points off of Freiburg and 9 points off of Union Berlin, who occupy 5th and 6th at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So their agenda has to be European football, like no two ways about it, and they'll definitely fancy it. So they're definitely capable of an upturn in form. I don't think that's beyond the players, but I think Bielefeld, Augsburg are really the only two good games I see in sight until you get to like April. April, you get Mainz, Firth, Cologne, then the Freiburg, that'll be a 6-pointer, then Leipzig, that'll be a 6-pointer, Frankfurt, a 6-pointer, Hoffenheim, a 6-pointer. So the end of Mönchengladbach season, like that April stretch, is cup finals every week. So if you reckon, and I think guys like Alassane Plea, Nico Elvelde, I bought a limited Kaidu Kone today or yesterday or something like that. I think they've got some exceptional players. It's just about whether they've got it.
I mean, if you throw out basically their next match, the Union Berlin, and you throw out Dortmund, and obviously just like throwing out matches is, it's not like they don't play them.
Yeah, no, but I'm with you.
But like 4 of their next 6 are teams below them in the table, and they're 12th. Like it's not like we're like, oh, the teams are below and they're 3rd. Like they're 12th, so they're competing against relegation, teams battling relegation here for what feels like a while. And frankly, the few games that aren't against teams below them, they're the team right above them and 2 above them. And so it's like, I don't know, if they're not playing, they obviously have Dortmund. They're not playing Bayern anytime soon. Leverkusen's not there. Hoffenheim's not there. Freiburg, like Leipzig, none of those teams are on the schedule in the next 2 months, other than
until
Dortmund.
the end of the season. Yeah. I know, you're dead right. So after that Dortmund game, and even the Berlin one, technically speaking, that's January, so even if you do go from February, it is just Dortmund. It's a tough game there. That's 4 weeks where the fixture is like up, they probably should beat Stuttgart. They will probably beat Wolfsburg as well. Bielefeld, they should spank, but again, they've just been underperforming. It's tough, but I think that's
right. It's like the Gladbach we want to know should crush these teams, but
big time. I think, and I think I say that couldn't do Coney. I bought his limited because like people are starting to talk about him now, and I'm not getting the time to save up to buy his rare, so I just went and bought his limited kind of thing. So maybe the form is kind of coming back around for them. But I think like a team like Gladbach, who you're saying a team that we know, right? See teams like that, even when they are, and I'm not telling you something you've never noticed before, right? But teams like that, when they are up against the wall, that's when normally that fixture list for a big team like Gladbach, they might be like avoiding relegation, and it's like, oh my god, look at the last month from hell. Can they do it? It's the great escape, and they probably will do it because there's really good players. But obviously, they're not fighting relegation. They'll be so. Again, if you kind of remember that Gladbach of old, and if you're watching them and you see them and you think they've still got a bit of something to give, then the last month of the season could be when guys are like, last minute goals and I say big games, or when big scores come out of big players. That's really it for me, unless you're at Dortmund, Bayern, I beg your pardon.
Yeah.
But sorry, the last kind of little, I went away in a different direction, I beg your pardon, but to have Dortmund on the 20th of February and then to never see Dortmund and Bayern again for the rest of the season is a great position for a Bundesliga club to be in,
Yeah.
So, because any team can beat MD in that league, really, and it could be 4-2, it could be 1-0, regardless of position and whatever. And I say they're definitely the sum of their parts is definitely not a representation of where they are in the league. Certainly
feels that way.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Alassane Playa. I've always liked him, but he's 3 goals in 18. Wow. Do you know, I get really excited about Max Arnold because he's below all of his expected and usual numbers. And looking at Alassane Playa now gives me that same kind of vibe. Like
I agree.
He's like a 1 in 3 guy, and now he's 1 in 6. 1 in 2 at least. Yeah, so I like Playa.
He hasn't been starting. That's the problem. But he comes on every match, and it's like, do I want to play a guy? Oh, yeah, so maybe. That's the other thing. It's like you're almost locked out of both because Mbolo has been starting, but he plays 60 minutes, and then Plie comes in for 30, and it's like, I don't want either guy. Like, you don't want players who play partial matches, and yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. I don't mind it if I've got the guy on the cheap. And he'll definitely at least get 30. So I'll just throw him out, and if something happens, it happens. But if it's like the key guy you're trying to build around, or you need to include, it's redundant having that guy because it's such a fine line. Just looking at Thuram as well, his minutes are kind of all over the place. I wonder what's been going on. I say I've not been close to Gladbach, but I like I like the February, especially knowing after Dortmund that's done with the big boys, and I really like the fact that the end of the month is mental, crazy hard, because if they're fighting for stuff, I just say it will be do or die. Jan Sommer will get hundreds every week. Well, excellent. That's all we've got time for this week. But Andy, thanks a lot for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure. Yeah, thanks a lot, man.
No, thank you for having me. I always learn a ton from you, and so I got lots to learn I learned lots from this one, and yeah, always a pleasure to join you.
Thanks a lot, Andy. See you soon.